Thank you for that introduction, and thank you to Isabella and her colleagues at Cybersec for hosting this excellent conference and for inviting me. Cybersec is an outstanding institution making a very positive contribution to global cybersecurity. I'm very proud to represent the UK's National Cybersecurity Centre, part of GCHQ, our Signals Intelligence Agency. It's a pleasure to be among friends discussing our shared aim of improving our digital environment. Our commitment to working with European partners here on this continent is unshakable. Whatever form the future relationship between the UK and the European Union takes beyond the 29th of March this year, the Prime Minister and her cabinet have long made clear that our support to European security as a whole is unconditional. More practically, within the cybersecurity sphere, it is objectively true that nearly all of the functions of the UK's National Cybersecurity Centre fall outside the scope of European Union competence. So it follows that our enhanced cooperation with European partners and the EU as a whole in cybersecurity over recent years is not automatically affected by the UK's changing relationship with the EU. Pretty much everything we do now to help European partners and what you do to help us on cybersecurity can, should, and I am confident will continue beyond the 29th of March. Over the past few years, we have shared classified and other threat data with the vast majority of member states and with the EU institutions. We have also, we hope, played an important role in the development of European thinking in areas like standards and incident response. We hope we've helped through our work with CERT-EU on incidents and with ENISA and ETSI on standards. So as the next phase of the UK's relationship with the rest of the European continent takes shape, we will want to take these partnerships further and to develop new ones. I'm proud of the increasing frequency with which I see my European counterparts and the deepening friendships we've nurtured, the boundaries we are removing, and the new ground we are breaking. The protection of our shared values of freedom, democracy and prosperity, all underpinned by the rule of law, is what we strive for. My theme today is about how we cooperate in the age of globalized technology. Because whatever form the UK's relationship with the EU takes, we need together to be at the forefront of global efforts to build an internet that remains not just free, but safer too. And in this era of truly globalized technology, it's more important than ever that that effort is truly global. There are limitations to what even a continent the size and wealth of Europe can do on its own in an age where the United States and China dominate tech development. So I want to deal today with two structural challenges for the future of the internet and future of internet security. The first is about telecommunications infrastructure now and in the future. The second is how we improve structural flaws in the wider internet environment. In both areas, EU and non-EU European nations will need to act with others outside the continent to shape future technology and the security around it. So first, let's talk about telecommunications infrastructure. The next generation of telecom security is particularly important given the sorts of networks dependent on it. There will be large-scale use of autonomous vehicles, desktop experiences from the cloud, high-definition streaming, and technology underpinning smart cities. Like many countries, including our Five Eyes partners and partners here in Europe, the UK is looking at the right approach to 5G security. That policy approach is being led by our digital department and its Secretary of State. It concludes its analysis in the spring. The government will then take decisions. Now, as its public terms of reference make clear, this is a holistic review taking account of economic, security, quality of service, and other factors. It is considering a full range of policy options. Everything is on the table. Contrary to some reporting, no decisions have been taken and no decisions are being announced today. The National Cybersecurity Centre's role is to offer expert, objective, technologically literate input into the security considerations around 5G. That's consistent with the NCSC's wider mission to bring objective rigor to complex technical issues. And today I want to talk to you about some of the lessons we have learned. The first thing to say is that 5G is complicated. It hugely accelerates the pace of technological change. But there is no cliff-edge transition. It will change the way we think about risk because of what will, over time, come to depend on it. But it doesn't change immutable concepts of security or the laws of science. And whilst key to the virtual world, it requires a huge amount of complex physical infrastructure. And how that physical infrastructure is configured varies from country to country, not least depending on the size of the country's landmass and its population. And it's not a completely fresh start. It has to build on existing telecommunications infrastructure. Understanding these complexities is essential. The National Cybersecurity Centre is an open and transparent organisation. We have set out before our understanding of how telecommunication networks work and what is needed to secure them. And we will continue to publish objective, technically credible, clear-headed, and rigorous analyses of cybersecurity requirements. And we need to set out telecommunication security in the context of the wider threat picture. Again, here we are open and transparent about the threats we see and how they impact the UK. Over the past 2 years, the UK government has, based on NCSC findings, attributed state-sponsored malicious cyber activity against the UK to Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. There is also a serious and sustained threat from organised cybercrime. These attacks have come against a range of targets spanning different sectors. Their aims have been different, the methods have been different. The supply chain and where suppliers are from is one issue, but it is not the only issue. Last year, the NCSC publicly attributed some attacks on UK networks, including telecoms networks, to Russia. As far as we know, those networks did not have any Russian kit in them anywhere. The techniques the Russians used to target those networks were looking for weaknesses in how they were architected and how they were run. So we are not naive, far from it. In the 1,200 or so significant cybersecurity incidents the NCSC has managed since we were set up, the country of origin of suppliers has not featured among the main causes for concern in how these attacks were carried out. That's one example of our objective evidence-based analysis of the threat. We take a similar objective evidence-based approach to the technical security requirements for 5G. And taking these threat and security requirements together, this leads us to conclude that there are 3 technical preconditions for secure 5G networks. They are: first, we must have higher standards of cybersecurity across the entire telecommunications sector. The biggest threat to our cybersecurity is weak cybersecurity. Practices must be improved. That is the real lesson of the 1,200 cybersecurity incidents. The market, does not currently incentivize good cybersecurity. That has to change, because the number one precondition for safe 5G is better cybersecurity. Second, telecoms networks must be more resilient. We must assume that a global supply chain will have multiple vulnerabilities, whether intentional or, more likely, unintentional. Networks are built by human beings, and human beings make mistakes. No networks can be totally safe. From the point of view of managing corporate risk, or in our case, national risk, it essentially doesn't matter whether the vulnerabilities are deliberate or the result of honest mistakes. What matters is that those vulnerabilities can and will be exploited. But the networks can and should be designed in a way that will cauterize the damage. That is what we need to do. Put it another way, if you've built a telecommunications network in a way that the compromise of one supplier can cause catastrophic national harm, then you've built it the wrong way. Resilience is the key. The third precondition flows from that. There must be sustainable diversity in the supplier market. Should the supplier market consolidate to such an extent that there are only a tiny number of viable options, that will not make for good cybersecurity, whether those options are Western, Chinese, or from anywhere else. Any company in an excessively dominant market position will not be incentivized to take cybersecurity seriously. And at the same time, that company could also become the prime target for attack for the globe's most potent cyber attackers. These preconditions are technical. They are generic. They are about the technology and the architecture and the structure of our networks. They are about creating the necessary conditions for a safe 5G network. As already mentioned, like everywhere else, the UK is not starting from scratch. We have an existing telecommunications infrastructure. It is highly internationalized, and we already have a framework for managing risk. Again, I stress that this is based on an objective understanding of how telecoms networks work. As our guidance to operators shows, we assume that every bit of kit in any network can fail. So what's vital is that the failure of individual bits of kit, either because of a malfunction or because of an attack, will not cause catastrophic harm. That's the framework we apply at national level. There are things we particularly care about, national security networks most obviously, and for those we apply special protections. One well-known specific aspect of our current mitigation framework is how we manage Huawei's presence in UK networks. Huawei's presence is subject to detailed formal oversight led by the National Cybersecurity Centre. Because of our 15 years of dealings with the company and 10 years of a formally agreed mitigation strategy, which involves detailed provision of information, we have a wealth of understanding of the company. We also have strict controls for how Huawei is deployed. It is not in any sensitive networks, including those of the government. Its kit is part of a balanced supply chain with other suppliers. Our regime is arguably the toughest and most rigorous oversight regime in the world for Huawei. And it is proving its worth. Last July, our annual oversight board downgraded the assurance we could provide to the UK government on mitigating the risks associated with Huawei because of serious problems with their security and engineering processes. As we said then and repeat today, these problems are about standards of cybersecurity. They are not indicators of hostile activity by China. The company have accepted these findings and have pledged to address them, acknowledging that this will be a process of some years. We will monitor and report on progress, and we will not declare that the problems are on the path to being solved unless and until there is clear evidence that this is the case. we will not compromise on the improvements we need to see from Huawei. And based on our hard-headed assessment of risk and our detailed knowledge of how networks work, we are putting in place our own plans for helping our operators to manage the risks. So today I'm setting out how the NCSC is looking to manage the risks now, for example, those around Huawei, and how we could seek to manage the risks into the future. The UK community is united in this effort. As the head of MI6, Alex Younger, said in Munich last week, it's complicated. As the director of GCHQ, my boss Jeremy Fleming has set out before and will do again shortly, it's vital that the UK's stance is informed by the most rigorous assessment of the threat, the risks and technical requirements. And GCHQ, of which the NCSC is part, is at the heart of that discussion. It's the NCSC's job, working with partners in central government, the regulators and elsewhere, to make sure the UK can prosper securely in these complex market conditions through a hard-headed, technically informed assessment of the risk. That will enable government to weigh up those vital decisions on things like suppliers from different countries. 5G is about more than just cybersecurity. Our job is to make sure that the government can be confident that behind whatever decision it takes, there will be a technical framework that works and a competent national technical authority that knows what it's doing. Whatever decisions are taken will need to ensure that those three essential preconditions for cybersecurity that we have set out today can be met. Stronger standards, more resilience, and supplier diversity. Indeed, our experience with Huawei, if nothing else, demonstrates the importance of raising standards of performance in cybersecurity. 5G security is not a simple binary choice. It is about complex technical functions, a complex global threat environment, and a complex global market. One thing is clear, the way that market works has to change. Security must be a bigger consideration in market decisions in the future than it has been to date. We will help fix that. And finally, that push to improve standards in cybersecurity should be a global effort. The more we can do with partners to deliver those improvements, the better. This brings me to the wider issue of how we cooperate to improve the global digital infrastructure more generally. The internet was not built with security in mind. That's no one's fault. It wasn't malicious, it's just the way it happened. A model evolved over time where the price of entry for online services became the provision of personal data. I think it's safe to say that the limitations of that model are becoming more apparent as time passes. But they also leave us with structural security problems in the way the internet works. At the National Cybersecurity Centre, we focus on the technical solutions that the market hasn't provided because of the way the internet environment has evolved. We aim to make the internet automatically safer for people to use. It's not fair on busy individuals with complicated, rushed lives and other priorities if we expect them to make judgments every day about how trustworthy one of the hundreds or thousands of bits of communication they get every day are. That is what is behind our active or automated cyber defense program. Its aim is to provide a framework to take away most of the harm from most of the people, most of the time. Briefly, here are some of the early results. We've developed a system to use our vast quantity of threat data to block communications to malicious sites from government networks. We are now protecting 1.3 million government internet users. In 2018, we blocked 11,000 unique malicious domains every month. In the course of 2018, we blocked 54 million malicious connections. That's 54 million incidents that automatically didn't happen. We developed an anti-spoofing mechanism to protect government brands. In the first year, we helped our tax authority block 500 million attempts to spoof it. 500 million fake emails that did not land in people's inboxes. We've developed a system for automatically taking down known phishing sites. They used to be up for a day on average. Now it's about an hour. And the UK's share of global phishing that we can see has fallen from 5.3% to 2.2% in the past 2.5 years. Think of the potential if we can amplify these sorts of improvements internationally. None of them has required legislation. None have been particularly contentious. They are technical improvements, targeted government interventions where commercial solutions can't work. They are low classification. We publish details for most of them. I cannot think of an area more ripe for international cooperation. So whether it's future telecommunications infrastructure or digital security more generally, we in the UK want to work with everyone across Europe and beyond to push these changes, to deliver the digital world we all want to see. One that is not just free and prosperous, but safer as well. Thank you.